I'm here to provide virtual support for both you and the presenter during the presentation. All attendees have been muted, so we ask that you put your questions in the chat or at the end of the presentation. If time allows, you can also raise your hand on the icon, and we will be happy to unmute you to ask your question. Should you have any questions or need assistance with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, search for my name, and send a direct private message to me. I will do my best to provide assistance to resolve your concern. But for now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to your presenter for this session titled What to Do After Submitting the Financial Aid Application, WebGrants, and More, presented by Mina Tran.
Thank you, Christian. Hi, my name is Mina Tran. I am one of the trainers here at the California Student Aid Commission. I'm so excited for all of you to join us today. Today's session is on what to do after submitting the financial aid applications, WebGrants, and more. And so this presentation is geared towards, high school counselors who have spent from October 1st until March 2nd, and even past March 2nd, getting your students to fill out their financial aid application, whether it's the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. And the next steps are what now? How can we make sure that your student qualifies for financial aid? So this portion will deal a lot with WebGrants. And so if you don't have WebGrants access, that is something that maybe one of my colleagues can drop the link to, because it is really important to have WebGrants access to be able to access all the different reports, to be able to match your student with the GPA, as well as to make all the edits and whatnot. So as Christian had mentioned, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type it in the chat box. I have a few colleagues in this session with me that will be answering your questions as I am presenting. I do have a lot of information to cover, and so I'm hoping that if we can finish the presentation early, that we will be able to answer any questions in real time. But I also will include our customer service school support phone number and email if you have any questions about your student's application or their Cal Grants. So as I'd mentioned, we have a hefty agenda today. We are going to talk about unmatched GPAs and why it's so important to match them to your student's financial aid application. Talk about the GPA reports and how that can help you with that process. And how to match the GPAs to their financial aid application, and delve into WebGrants for students. So this is a portal specifically for students, but I want you to have a better understanding of how to get your students to create their account and how to really fully use it so that they know how much they're receiving in Cal Grant money, how much eligibility they have remaining, etc. We'll talk more about scholarship and other financial aid. I am from the California Student Aid Commission, so the bulk of my expertise is in Cal Grants, but I will share a little, more information about different scholarship websites, etc., that would be beneficial to your students. And last but not least, we'll talk about resources that you can utilize that we provide at the Student Aid Commission. So let's jump into it. So why match GPA? So this is really important because for students to be eligible for a Cal Grant, they need to make sure that they have a financial aid application on file, as well as a matched GPA in order to be considered for a Cal Grant. So even if they've submitted their financial aid application on time, and even if the school had maybe submitted a GPA, if it has not been matched to the student's application, then the application is essentially in limbo. The student is not considered for Cal Grant consideration. And there's lots of different reasons why the student's GPA might not have been matched. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a few slides, but without that matched GPA, the student will be considered for Cal Grant consideration. And your school, if your school is in that race to submit dashboard competition, you're competing against all the other schools in your district, without that matched GPA, that number isn't counted towards your school's completion rate. So that's why it's important to have a matched GPA. So GPA matching obviously occurs after the GPA has already been uploaded. So that window to upload usually opens up the summer before the student becomes a senior, because we're really looking only at their sophomore and junior year grades And so oftentimes your district is going to be the one that uploads GPA. So it is one less thing for you to worry about. But once the GPAs have been uploaded, and as soon as your students start submitting their applications starting October 1st, that's when the whole matching process can begin. So normally our WebGrant system is going to do that matching automatically based on the demographic information from the financial aid application, as well as the demographic information that was provided on the GPA upload. So we're looking at their name, their date of birth, address, and email. So those are a lot of the key components on how to get a student's GPA to match. This is the GPA calendar. So as you know, we are now wrapping up the 21-22 academic year. So we really should be focusing on that bottom row, so the 22-23 academic year, because that is when the seniors should be starting college. The applications, for the most part, should have been submitted by that March 2nd deadline. You know, that is what I say is our priority deadline, because students are considered for high school entitlement Cal Grant. They would be considered for the competitive cycle if they don't qualify, the middle class scholarship, etc. If you do have students that might have missed that March 2nd deadline that are considering attending a community college, the great news is that we have a September 2nd deadline for financial aid applications to be submitted specifically for the community college Cal Grant. So that is just a new Cal Grant that was implemented this academic year. We refer to it as our E3 program, our community college Cal Grant. And so they still have time to submit their GPA as well as their application. But ideally, March 2nd is the deadline we want ingrained in our head. And so you'll see the deadlines for uploading the GPA. Then you'll see the dates for the GPA matching, because we only have a short window of when all the GPAs can get matched to the financial aid application. So that way we can process students for Cal Grant consideration. That editing window is also a very short window. So as you know, it's going to close in about a week. That doesn't mean you can't match the student. It just means it's harder because you'll have to be 100% sure that that student is correct versus being able to go into the student's account and updating their demographic information so it matches their financial aid application. So what is an unmatched GPA? So as I'd mentioned before, you know, schools, you know, for the most part, do a really great job of uploading GPAs. Usually the October 1st is when we have that deadline of when ideally we'd like the GPAs to be in the system. That way, as soon as students start their applications and submit them, then we can start that matching process. So an unmatched GPA is just a GPA that isn't matched based on maybe a discrepancy in name. So if you look at this example, just, you know, it could easily be the same student, but he could have his name written in a lot of different ways. So there's Miguel Garcia, Miguel Hernandez. Maybe he spells it Miguel Hernandez Garcia. Maybe there's a hyphen in between Hernandez Garcia. Maybe he's a junior, but this could all be the same student, but because either his financial aid application and the GPA upload from the school, the names are different, his GPA is going to be in limbo, and as a result will not get matched and then processed for Cal Grant consideration. And besides that, we're also looking at date of birth, the student's address. So maybe if the student had moved over the summer and had not updated the school, you know, these are different things that we're really looking at to make sure that the student has a GPA that has been matched. Just a second note, if you know you have school sites or districts that are uploading GPAs for your high school seniors, we also really want to include your prior year graduates. And the reason why it's so important to upload GPAs for them as well is because they're still being considered in the high school entitlement window. So in order to be considered for a high school entitlement Cal Grant, it's for current year seniors as well as the prior year graduates. And you know, the high school entitlement window means if you meet all the deadlines, you have a GPA on file, there's a financial need, then you're essentially entitled to that Cal Grant And we have an unlimited number of those entitlement Cal Grants. So we really want students to be able to utilize that, because it really is one of the easiest times for them to receive a Cal Grant. And so maybe you had seniors from the prior year that might have missed that March 2nd deadline or wanted to take a break between high school and college. So we don't want them to miss out on having a GPA on file. So I think it's really important to, remind your district that we should still be uploading GPAs for your prior year graduates as well. So I'd mentioned earlier this race to submit. So race to submit is, a great way to facilitate maybe competition within your school, maybe within a rival high school, within your district. And what it is it keeps track of the number of completion rates at your school site. So not only the number of students that have submitted their financial aid application, but also those that have a GPA matched. And that's actually the number that we're looking at. And, it's great to check out the leaderboard. I believe we just recently announced the winners. There's 8 tiers, and the tiers are based on the number of student enrollment at your school site. And so it's a really great honor to show that your school is one of the top in the state that has a high completion rate. So if you're curious about it, maybe your school hasn't yet fully embraced the race to submit, please don't hesitate to check out, our website, check out the leaderboard. And it really is, a good way to just maybe have a competition with the high school, across the way to see who has a higher completion rate. So, here's a quick checklist that we like to have readily available for counselors who are working with high school seniors. So at the beginning of their senior year, we tend to ask you to have your students fill out a GPA demographic verification form. We have some available on our website. It's just a quick form that asks your seniors for their core demographic information so that you have the most up-to-date, that you have their name, and we recommend that they use the name that is on, any sort of legal document, their birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, and, update their address in case they moved. And then by October 1st, hopefully your school site or your district has uploaded GPAs for your students. We, ideally want this GPAs in the system by October 1st, because that's also when the FAFSA and the CADA are opening up. Now, by January 1st, you should be notifying your juniors of the opt-out of having a GPA submitted for them. Now, I don't know why most students would want to have their GPA not submitted by the school, but it is something that we need to have readily available. And so I believe we do have also that opt-out form available on our website. March 2nd is that all-encompassing deadline, not only for students to submit their financial aid application, but also to, for all the schools to submit the GPAs as well. We do have some late GPA appeals. And so if there is a slight chance that maybe one student might have been missed out on that GPA upload, please don't hesitate to reach out to our school support, because we want to make sure that, hopefully through the appeal process, we can still get that GPA in for your student. And then between the time you upload GPAs all up until September, you should be able to match your student's application to the GPA if it hasn't already been done so by our system, by our WebGrants system. And for those students who have been awarded a Cal Grant, one of the criteria is that they need to confirm their high school graduation, and students can do that via their WebGrants for Students portal, or as a high school, whoever has WebGrants access can actually verify the high school graduation date of your entire senior class that have been awarded a Cal Grant. So this is a very easy process, but it does need to be done by August 31st. If you are someone at your school site that is the one that uploads GPA, know that we have lots of resources available to you. So if you go to our csac.ca.gov website and just go to that GPA tools section, we not only have user guides that walk you through that process, but all of our templates that we use is also available there. So we try to make life easy for you. And we also have weekly live webinars, especially during the core months where schools should be uploading GPAs, that you can sign up and attend, and we will, walk you through that process. It's a lot more detailed than today's webinar. All right, so let's now talk about GPA reports. So this is another great tool to utilize if you have WebGrants access. We have lots of different reports that allow you to essentially confirm that a GPA has been uploaded for your school, identify which GPAs has still not been matched to a student's account. You can identify students that have not yet submitted an application, so that way you can follow up with them to see if they need assistance, or give them just a reminder of when the deadline is. And it also allows you to identify your students that have been awarded a Cal Grant, so you can follow up to make sure that they've signed up for their WebGrants for Students portal. So we do have quite a lot of different GPA reports readily available. These are the ones that I would highly recommend that you utilize, especially that first one, that non-SSN GPA status report. That is really an all-encompassing report. In the next few slides, I'll give you a screenshot of what that looks like and how it can be beneficial to you as you identify students who do not yet have a GPA match to their account. There's also the student summary report that will identify any students that have incomplete financial aid applications. So maybe they started, maybe they haven't yet started. So that way you can pull aside those students to see if they need additional support or help with some of the questions. And it also lists students that have been already awarded a Cal Grant. Then there's the financial application No GPA. These lets us know that there's no GPA that's on file for them. So that's another key thing. That way we know to upload a GPA for these students. So when you are in your WebGrants system, how can you access these reports? You're going to go to Cal Grant, click on data transfer, and then from there, another window is going to pop up and you're going to show report download. This is what the screen will look like. Now, if you want to check out all the different reports that is available to you, you would just click on all and then click on the search button and it'll populate with all of the different reports. But if you want to choose specifically, let's say the non-SSN GPA status report, then you can use the drop-down menu and click on that particular report. So this is the non-SSN GPA upload report, which lets us know that a school site has uploaded the GPA for the students. Now, this is important information if you maybe had duplicate uploads and you need to reach out to our school support to maybe delete one. You would then reach out to school support using that batch number. So in the red box, you can see batch 93120, and you can reach out and say, this is a duplicate account, that way it doesn't hinder the matching process. And so this just lets us know that GPAs have been uploaded at this particular site. All right, so this is the report. This is the all-encompassing non-SSN GPA status report. Now, when you pull it up, obviously there won't be all these red, yellow, green colors, but I had wanted to point this out to you. So, the green highlights are your students that have been matched. So you'll notice that match column lets you know that the GPA has matched to the student's financial aid application. So that's great news. You don't need to worry about those students. Now, the ones in the yellow lets you know that it has not yet been matched. However, there are parts of the student's financial application as well as the GPA that have matched. So for example, Nadia Amati, we know that her first, last name, her initial, as well as the city all matched. But the other part, maybe her address, maybe she moved over the summer, right? So that is one of the things that you can go in and correct so that the address matches whatever she has on her financial aid application. Now, for those in red, you'll notice that it says no app. So these are the students that have not yet submitted a financial aid application. So maybe they haven't yet gotten started. Maybe something is missing from their application. So these are, additional students to reach out to see if they need to maybe attend a Cash for College workshop, if they need additional support, or maybe just a reminder to fill out the application by that March 2nd deadline. So I mentioned earlier about duplicate GPAs. Now, we don't want that to happen, but sometimes, the district uploads a batch and then the school doesn't realize that, and then the school uploads a batch. And so duplicate GPAs can hinder a student being matched to the correct GPA. So if this is the result, like I'd mentioned before, please reach out to our school support with the batch number that needs to be deleted. So, I don't believe it's anything that you can do on your end, but, it's an easy fix for us if you can just reach out with the correct batch number that needs to be deleted. Now here is a screenshot of the student summary report. So from here, it lets you know the different batch IDs and how the GPA was uploaded. That's in the green box. In the red box, it lets you know the student's application status. So whether it was on time, which is yes, if it was late, or if there was no EFC. No EFC just means that the application is not yet completed. Maybe it's missing a parent signature. Maybe student didn't include their parents' tax information. So these are things to follow up to see what might be holding up the application. And then in that last blue column is whether a student has been awarded. So of course we want to see as many yes as possible, but the no's could be because the application was maybe late or something is incomplete. So, this is another easy way for using the reports to identify students that you might need to follow up with. And then last but not least, the financial application, no GPA. This just lets you know that, the student had listed your school on their financial aid application, which is why their name is listed on this list. And you just need to make sure that if there is no GPA, whether there needs to be a GPA upload for your seniors, your prior year graduates, or additional, even if they've graduated a few years ago, they are able to come back and ask for a GPA to be submitted for them. All right, so now let's talk about how to help your students and match GPAs. So, the first thing I would recommend is utilize all those different reports to identify which student you need to match their GPA. So we'll walk through that process. So, from the different reports, for example, let's look at this student. We're going to look at Shannon Aguilera Gonzalez. We know that her GPA has not yet gotten matched, but based on her financial aid application, we know that her first name, her date of birth, and her city has matched. All the other different components might not have gotten matched yet. So let's look and see what we can do. So, once you're on WebGrants and you go to the Non-SSN GPA screen, you can then look up students. We recommend to pull as many students as possible to leave the last name blank. And then you would put just the first 3 letters of the student's name, your school's 6-digit school board ID, as well as 2 zeros afterwards. And you're going to search for all of the different students that might have that query. So in this case, looking at this list where the red arrow is, we see that Shannon is there. So we're going to double click it. Because it's in gray, it means that the student has not yet gotten matched to the GPA yet. The green means that it's matched and there's not much else we would need to do with that account. But anything that's gray, we would then double click. And this shows us a breakdown of the different students that have the first 3 letters of SHA, that have the same date of birth, and maybe the same city. So those are the different components that we're looking at. So record number 1 shows that that's the most likely candidate of the student that attends your school. We know, looking at that application, that, the last name is a little off. We know she has 2 last names and the school had uploaded it with both last names, but she might have left one off her financial application. Looking at her address, she lives in an apartment, but it was listed on her financial application, but was not included for the school's upload. You'll notice that the zip code is also incorrect. And so these are the things that we're looking at. This is all the different things that our WebGrants system is looking at in order to match a student to her GPA. But you're looking at this and 100% that this is the correct student. And so from there, you can actually manually match your student. So that way the GPA is now matched to their financial aid application. So once you submit change, a pop-up window will ask you to confirm that that is the correct, that you want to submit the data, and you just press OK. And from there, the student is now matched. And within the weekend, your student will then get processed for Cal Grant consideration. So you don't know how often this happens because we're really looking at just demographic information. We no longer do a social security number as a matched process. We're looking at the non-SSN and just basic demographic information. And the name throws off the matching process quite often. And so that was a successful match. But there are going to be times where you see this error message that says no ICER data found for selection criteria. And if that's the case, we want to make sure that the student has submitted their financial aid application. Maybe if they had submitted their financial aid application within a day or two, the commission maybe has not yet received that data from the FAFSA. Since it is a federal application, it usually takes about 7 to 10 business days for us to receive that information. So we would suggest just waiting another week or so before you attempt to match the student again. So maybe the student doesn't have a complete application. So these are some reasons why you might not be able to match the student, because the application does need to be complete. If you have any issues, you can always reach out to our school support, which they would be able to give you maybe a little bit more insight as to why you might be getting that error message. In the next couple slides, I'll talk about how to edit the GPAs. I won't go into it too much. We do have live weekly webinars that walk you through the whole matching process, that walks you through the editing process. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out our website for additional live webinars. But this window is going to be open just for one more week. And so if you do have WebGrants access, use those reports to see who you might need to edit the GPA for. So you're editing GPAs, essentially you're editing the demographic information so that it matches the student's financial aid application. You can just manually match and skip this process, or you can just, make sure that you edit so everything matches, and then our system will be able to then match the student's GPA to their financial aid application. Best practices in general. Prior to uploading GPAs, we recommend utilizing that student demographic verification form. That way you have the student's most up-to-date demographic information. Once the GPAs have been uploaded, I recommend using that non-SSN GPA status report, because it really has a lot of information that lets you know which students' application have been matched, which have not yet been matched, no application, etc. So that way you can follow up with students. If you have students that have submitted an application but it's incomplete, make sure that they have submitted their parent's signature. Some students need to send in a paper signature. Some might not have included their parents' tax information, and so it's an incomplete application, and students will not get processed for Cal Grant consideration. All right, so in this next section, we are going to talk about WebGrants for students. Now, we do have WebGrants for institutions, which that's where you will access all the different reports and be able to match your students. But this portal is specifically for students. And I don't think a lot of students realize that we do have this portal readily available so that they can check to make sure that all their information is correct, that a GPA has been uploaded for them. This is the website. Students can access it via our csac.ca.gov website, or they can just go directly by mygrantinfo.csac.ca.gov. This is just a great way for them to take ownership of their financial aid application. They will be able to see if there's any pending requirements that they need to follow up with. Once they have been preliminarily awarded a Cal Grant, they are able to confirm their school of attendance once they decide which college they want to attend in the fall. And when they graduate, they will be able to confirm their high school graduation. So this is a screenshot of what they would see. So, when they log in for this particular student, we see that their application status is incomplete. It breaks it down. There's different tabs based on the academic year that the student has applied for. We do have 3 awards that students would be able to see. So Cal Grant, the Middle Class Scholarship, as well as the Chafee Grant for foster youth. So there are going to be some instances where students will see both their Cal Grant as well as Chafee Grant if they are eligible as a foster youth. So, but for the most part, a majority of students would see, let's say, the Cal Grant window. And so if they are, awarded and they have completed all the different requirements, this is the tab that they would be able to see. So they would be able to go on their WebGrants for Students portal and change the school of attendance. It's a fairly easy fix. And so they would just go in, confirm which school they're attending so we know where to send their Cal Grant in the fall. The important thing is also the remaining eligibility. Students might not realize that they only receive 4 years of Cal Grant eligibility. So that little box is really a great indicator to show them that maybe they have 2 years left or 3.5 years left. So to really keep track of that. And you'll notice at the very bottom of that red box, this is a good way for students to see if a GPA has already been submitted by their high school. And so in this case, it was submitted by East Bakersfield High School. It lets students know what the GPA was. And so they know that, once they've submitted their financial aid application, there's a GPA on file and they'll get processed for Cal Grant information. And another thing that students can do on their WebGrants for Students portal is place a leave of absence. So, if a student has been awarded a Cal Grant, but they might want to take either a semester off, a quarter off, or even the entire year off, they're able to do so. Students are able to place a leave of absence up to 2 academic years. It doesn't need to be taken consecutively. They can just take a semester or quarter off, but they just would go on their WebGrants for Students account and just place their leave of absence. And that's also something that their college can do for them. But, this is a really great opportunity. As I'd mentioned, a high school entitlement Cal Grant is one of the easiest ways for students to receive a Cal Grant. And so if they're unsure if they want to go to college, definitely have your students apply and they can always place that Cal Grant on hold. Maybe you have students that are dead set on attending a college out of state, but have them place at least one California college on their application, and they can always place their Cal Grant on hold, maybe for a semester. And if they change their mind and want to come back to California, then at least that Cal Grant is still available for them to use. So using that leave of absence is important, and students don't realize that they can place a leave of absence with their Cal Grant. So, your students have submitted their financial aid application. They have been awarded, preliminarily awarded a Cal Grant. They're still figuring out where they're going. So one of the key things to assist students with is just having them understand their financial aid offer. And so, as we know, financial aid consists of, scholarships, grants, work study, etc. We want to be able to have students understand the type of aid that they're receiving, how much it covers, etc. So what we can do is have them look over their financial aid letters. It can be overwhelming to students and their families to really understand how much they're really going to pay. So, breaking down a financial aid award letter, we really want students and their families to understand the full cost. What is it going to cost to attend this particular college or university? Looking at tuition and fees, housing, books and supplies, etc. So in this example, the estimated cost of attendance, which all the colleges submit to the commission. So we do have like an estimated cost for each university. In this example, it's $42,982, which is, pretty hefty considering that's for one academic year. Now, the next step is to look at all the different financial aid that the student would then be eligible for. Now, we're breaking it down, maybe the student is eligible for a Pell Grant if they are a FAFSA filer, a Cal Grant if they're a California student attending a California university. Maybe they're receiving different types of private scholarships. Maybe their parents are taking out some loans, etc. So in this example, based on all the different financial aid, the student is eligible for up to about $26,000 in free money, grants, scholarships, etc. Once you subtract the estimated cost of attendance with all that financial aid, that's essentially the net price of what the family would have to cover. And so, they really have to take into consideration that would be over the course of 4 or 5, even 6 years, depending on how long it takes for a student to graduate from college. So these are all things that students should consider as they're looking at all the different award letters that are coming in for them. A good way to help students with that is using a financial aid comparison tool. The link at the bottom of this slide is a really great way for students and their families to get a better understanding and break down the different costs of attendance at all, maybe 3 or 4 different schools that they're considering. So this is a really good way to have an idea of what the cost would be for students and their families as they make the decision of what school to attend in the fall. And so these are just some helpful hints, not only for you, but also for the students. That March 2nd deadline is something that we ingrain for both students as well as schools to get their application in by that March 2nd deadline, because that way they can be considered for all of our awards. So Cal Grant consideration, and if the students and their family might make above that income threshold, then they would be processed for middle class scholarship consideration. So, but we are using that March 2nd deadline for those students. I recommend that all students apply regardless of income. Maybe they think their families make a little bit too much, but we do have, the middle class scholarship, and the middle class scholarship is getting revamped. So that way it could be more beneficial to more students. So that is we're all hoping to get that implemented by the upcoming 22-23 academic year. If your student is dead set on applying for an out-of-state college, please just have them list at least one California college on their application just as a backup. As I'd mentioned before, even if they're preliminarily awarded a Cal Grant, they can always place it on leave in case they change their mind and end up, maybe there's some special circumstances that need them to come back to California. At least there's a Cal Grant available for them. Having a student create a WebGrants for Students portal is great, because they will then be able to check, on their Cal Grant awards, if there's a GPA on file. It starts to make them a little bit more accountable for their financial aid. And ideally, I would recommend that students use their email. I've worked with students where their parents' email is on the account, and we want students to take ownership. They're 17, they're 18, etc. And we want them to be able to, hold themselves accountable to make sure that if there's any sort of pending, requirements, that they're the ones that will follow up with that. Also, to check their email regularly. A lot of times we're using the email that they use on their financial aid application. I definitely recommend that they use a personal email and not one that is associated with their high school, just because once they graduate from high school, who knows if they'll have access to that or will check that regularly. So definitely a personal email. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether they're calling the commission, our student support line, asking their financial aid office, asking you as their high school counselor. We want them to start asking for help either with their application or the follow-ups of what they need to do to receive their Cal Grants. And here are just some common application mistakes. One thing that students are a little bit confused about is which academic year they should be applying for. It's a little confusing because, we are in the current 21-22 academic year, but really students should be applying for the 22-23 academic year because that's when they'll be attending college. If the application was submitted after March 2nd, we did extend it to, I believe, April 1st. So there was a little bit of leeway if schools had submitted an appeal, or if students are attending a community college, then they do have that September 2nd deadline. But really, we want students to apply by that March 2nd deadline. If the name is listed incorrectly and there's not a GPA that's been matched, maybe it's missing a parent's signature. So these are things that we want to make sure that students address. And if you have any issues or students have any issues about how to make those corrections, then don't hesitate to reach out to the commission. All right, so let's talk about scholarships and other aid. So even though we really are focusing on Cal Grants mainly because that's what we administer, having worked with a lot of different agencies and whatnot, especially the community college level, I want to point out a few other additional aids that students are able to receive. So one at the community college level is the Student Success Completion Grant. So this is great for students that are on the fast track on completing all the units that they need in order to either transfer to a four-year university or maybe get their associate's degree. And this is an additional grant that they don't need to apply for. It is just going to look at the number of units that they receive, and this is a breakdown of how much additional grant money that they can receive. But the student does need to be eligible for a Cal Grant B or C already at the community college level, and they would just be processed for this consideration at the community college level. Then we have the California College Promise Grant. And so this is a separate application that the student would need to submit to their college that they are attending. You might recognize it. It used to be called the Board of Governors Fee Waiver. But this will, if the student has a financial need, then it waives their enrollment fee. So this is another great way for students to receive that additional grant money to help them with the cost of attending college. So this is a separate application. They can find this application via their college's website. This is our California Community College's website. It is icangotocollege.com. Lots of great information. If students are attending community college, this is a great resource to get them started at. And I know I've mentioned quite a lot about community college. There are a lot of additional aids at the four-year university level as well. Private universities have lots of scholarships and grants. And at the CSU level, they have state university grants. And at the UC levels, they've got the blue and gold, I think, scholarship or opportunity plans. So there are additional grants, but in this, PowerPoint, I did include mainly on the community college level. And here are just lots of different scholarship websites that we have recommended. I know that sometimes there's a lot of shady scholarships websites out there. We tell students if the scholarship website is asking you for money, then it is not legit. So these are the ones that we know we recommend to students and their families. The ones on the left column are all the different scholarship websites. The one on the right tends to be more of the work opportunities. Some students get jobs, part-time jobs to assist them with, college and stuff. And so these are some of the companies that provide a lot of tuition assistance for their employees. So these are things for students to maybe consider as they are looking for part-time jobs. So, lots of great opportunities for students to start looking into scholarships. A lot of times scholarships are specifically geared towards high school seniors. But if you're working with, your students, start having them start looking their junior year. Maybe there's some that are going to ask for essays. And so they can get a head start on that. Maybe start with ideas or making a list of all the different scholarships that they want. And also, if you have students that are, planning on studying in a particular field or maybe might play a specific instrument, a lot of times their universities might have specific scholarships for those. So that's another great way for your students to look into receiving additional scholarship money. So what is the best way to share with your students? And, I'm always open to hearing ideas from you as well. You're there working with your students, working with their parents. But these are just some ideas. I know a lot of you utilize Google Classroom, school websites. Maybe there's a tab where you post all the different scholarship opportunities available. Maybe you do class announcements. Maybe in the, guidance office or college center, there's a display board where students can check for new, scholarships that are coming out, or you send it out in a parent or student newsletters. I commend all of you for all the work that you do and, for getting your students to fill out these applications. I know that it's tedious, but it is, a great way for them to receive extra money for school. I don't know if some schools maybe do any sort of incentives, like if you submit and complete 10 scholarship, applications, and you'll get a raffle ticket and for prom tickets at the end. So who knows, if you have any ideas that you want to share, please, don't hesitate to chat, drop it in the chat box. We're all here to, learn from one another. And so this would be really great to see how you share that information or how you motivate your students to submit or complete and submit these scholarship applications. All right, we're in the home stretch, guys. I apologize if, this is a lot of information and I'm rushing through it. I want to make sure we get through all of this. And if there's any additional questions at the end, that'd be great. So here are a few more resources that we have available for you. If you haven't yet done so, I definitely recommend signing up for our CSAC listserv. So these are special alerts or operations memos that we send out, letting you know of any, upcoming changes, deadlines, etc. You can sign up specifically for the cohort of students that you work with. So whether they're at the high school level, maybe you want specific emails about AB 540, you can go to our CSAC website, scroll all the way down, and click on where it says subscribe to CSAC important updates and choose which type of emails you would like to receive. These are just a list of all the different CSAC trainings we have available for you. I went through really quickly the whole matching process, but we also have webinars about the whole editing process and a breakdown of all the different reports. I only gave you an idea about 3 of them. So if you're interested, definitely check out and see what types of live webinars we have available. We have our annual statewide financial aid workshops, which we are hoping to start up again in August. And we're hoping to do this in person. So if you are hoping to attend one of these workshops in person, sign up for our CSAC listserv, because as soon as the registrations open, we are going to send out that special alert. And I know all of us have been eager to be back on the road, and I anticipate that these workshops will get filled up pretty quickly. We also have YouTube training videos. There are times where you aren't able to, sign up for one of our webinars. And so you can just check out a quick video on how to match GPAs or upload GPAs, etc. So check out our YouTube. And then if you might be interested in having us, do a specific webinar, maybe at your school site or your district, please reach out to us at outreach-and-training@csac.ca.gov. We'll send you a training request form. These, webinars can be geared towards students and their families, or even just your colleagues, to understand WebGrants a little bit more. So you can always request a training request form. Cash for College. So these are free workshops for students and their families to attend. I'm hoping that a majority of you are hosting your own Cash for College workshops. If not, definitely recommend your students to attend these. These are either in person or even on, virtual still. And know that, even though the March 2nd deadline has passed, we still have webinars in the month of May. We are trying to assist students, especially those who are aiming for that September 2nd deadline. So know that we still have workshops available that you can send your students to complete the application. I mentioned all the different training outlets we have. These are just the links themselves that you can click. We have social media toolkits that you can utilize to maybe outreach to your students. If you have a website and you have a financial aid night, you can always tag us and we will, share on social media. That way we can get the word out. The commission is trying our best to be as engaged as possible on all these different platforms: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook. So definitely tag us or engage with us. And we have lots of reminders about deadlines and different workshops that we are hosting as well. And so looks like my colleagues have done a really great job about answering questions. I'm going to leave you with our school support as well as our student support lines. We are here to assist you in any way. So if you have any questions about a particular student or their account or WebGrants, please don't hesitate to reach out to our school support line. And if you have any students that might have any issues, you can give them our student support line so that they can call in as well. I'm going to take a quick breather, maybe a sip of water. I'm going to see if my colleagues might want to unmute themselves to address some questions that might have come in through the chat box. Or Christian, is there any questions that you think we should address?
From what I see, it looks like Yvonne did a really wonderful job of answering the questions that were coming through the chat. If we missed any, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi there, this is Yvonne Hollingsworth, one of the Q&A staff here. I just wanted to reiterate, if you didn't see my notes, there's a little hiccup with the upload of the PDF or the slide deck on the SCED app. So feel free to email me directly at yvonne.hollingsworth@csac.ca.gov, and I will email you a copy of that PDF until we get that uploaded to the SCED app. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mina, for sharing your expertise with all of our participants this morning. Please know that we are going to amend the current attachment on the SCED app, so you will have that available on the platform. The recordings will be posted on the CSAC event webpage by tomorrow. We also welcome you to use SCED to provide feedback so we can continue to provide you with the support you need to implement the upcoming application completion requirements. Thank you so much for attending the 3rd Annual California College Affordability Summit. Please don't forget to join Marlene Garcia for the closing remarks. I hope you all have a great day.